Hi, I'm Lauren and welcome back to my craft room. I'm super excited to have you today for my last video this month of the interactive element of the month. For the month of March, I've been using Pear Blossom Press products. The first 2 weeks I had their new halo lights, and last week in today's video is featuring the power packs with copper tape. Here is the Slimline card I made featuring this adorable little bear family from Whimsy stamps, as well as their cloudy Slimline die and some patterned paper. I hope you enjoy this tutorial, and you can find all of the information of all the products I used down below in the description. Here is a quick look at all the supplies we're going to be using. We're using Whimsy Stamps products for our dies, stamps, and paper. And we'll be using Pear Blossom Press Power Pack and Chibitronics white LEDs and copper tape. Now the pattern paper I have is a 6x6 pad, but since I want to use it on a slimline, I trimmed it down to be approximately 3 inches wide each. That's because I wanted my seams of that plaid paper to line up perfectly. The seam itself won't match up, but that's okay, it's going to be hidden. I wanted the gray and blue stripes of the plaid to line up, that way it looks seamless in the background of my slimline. I'm using some mint tape just to help hold those two pieces together, and I'm going to bring out my cloudy die cut that I've already die cut out of some solar white Neenah cardstock, and I'm just making sure that I like the placement and that you can hide the seam with the cloud, and you can't even tell that this used to be 2 pieces of a 6x6 paper pad. In order to save time, I also already stamped my image. I used some ink on 3 black ink and colored it in with my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. I also cut out the image using my scanning cut. So now I am trimming that background paper so it will hide perfectly behind my cloudy slimline die cut, where that seam is behind that largest cloud you can see in the middle. I have a Kraft cardstock base already cut. I cut it to 7 by 8.5, scored it along the 7-inch line at 3.5, so it creates an 8.5 by 3.5 slimline card. I put wet glue on the back of my pattern paper, and I am going to adhere that to the center of my craft card. Once that's in place, I'm going to take my die and make sure I did a pretty good job of fitting it onto my card base, and it looks pretty good. So we're going to move on to the next step. I'm going to bring out my foam tape, my copper tape, my double-sided adhesive roll, my LEDs, and my Pear Blossom Press Power Pack. It already comes with the battery. I'm going to put some of that double-sided adhesive onto the back of my Pear Blossom Press Power Pack, and I'm going to pull up all of that release paper, and I am going to use my clouds to kind of figure out where it's going to go. I settle on the bottom cloud, and it doesn't fit perfectly behind, but that's okay. I'm going to have a little bit of it poking out in just one spot behind that top right part of the cloud, and I'm going to use some other cloud die cuts to hide that. So instead of using a pencil and just marking exactly where I want my power pack to go, I'm going to make it harder on myself. I am just going to hold it very carefully where I think it should go. I'll very stealthily move that die cut out of the way and secure it down. And I did it. It wasn't too bad. You could also just use a pencil and make some small marks that are easily erasable or hidden, but that would be too easy. So I did it the hard way. I am now going to bring out my copper tape, and I'm going to figure out where I want my lights to go. I want them hidden behind that moon and bear family. So I am lining up my bears exactly where I want them to go, shifting the paper down just a little bit so I can use a pencil and draw the outline of that bear shape so I know where my copper tape needs to go. So you can see here, I'll do it again with the top of the bear there on the left. As you can see, my paper is brought down a little bit. You can see the top of the card, and that will just allow me to follow that line on my copper tape and not have to worry about those lines showing up when I adhere my Slimline cloud die cut to the card. So now I am taking my copper tape and just kind of following that pencil line. Looking back, I really wish I would have gone on top of the pencil line, but that's okay. the lights are still very visible and I still really like how the card turned out. But I didn't think about how making those lines lower than my bear meant I could cover the lines with my copper tape. So I'm just going around and I'm going to be doing the first side, and I bring back my Slimline cloud die just to make sure I'm not going to have any copper tape exposed. And you can see as I make the corners, I'm not cutting my tape, I'm just folding it back on itself so the sticky side is showing up, and then folding it again on itself to cover that sticky part up with more copper tape. I've gone all the way to the negative terminal of my power pack. I'm going to use my cloudy die cut just to make sure no copper tape is exposed, and then finally trim it. For the positive, I'm going to go along the top of the battery, which will be visible as you can see here with my white die cut on top of my paper. But that's okay, just like the other side, I'm just going to use some other cloud die cuts to cover it up. So now that I have my copper tape all the way to the edge of my card, I am going to again fold it back on itself so that the sticky side is showing, and then making that hard 90-degree turn by folding it again on top of itself, and you can see I have a nice path up the side of my card. I'm going to trim some of that white release paper because it's getting in my way, and now I am going to follow along that same copper line, but leaving a little bit of space for my LEDs to be adhered to my circuit. So there needs to be a little space in order for this to work, but you don't want the copper tape to be too far away, otherwise there won't be enough contact for the LEDs. So I am just lining it up, giving myself about 1/8 of an inch gap in between my positive and negative copper lines here. I'm going to make sure that all of my copper tape is adhered nicely and everything looks good. I'm going to layer over my dies and make sure I don't have any copper tape showing. So now I'm getting out my LED stickers. There is a positive and a negative side, so I want to make sure my positive side is on the positive side of my circuit. And my button accidentally got lodged in, so I pushed it again really hard, and that little purple plastic piece finally popped back out, and now my button is working and my lights are lighting up. So the great thing about using copper tape is that you can create your own design of where the lights are going to go, and you can use multiple lights. So I am going to use a total of 5 LED stickers, which seems kind of a lot, but I really want that light to shine bright behind my bears on their little moon. Once I'm happy with the placement of my LEDs, my button is working, I lay over my clouds and bears and make sure everything looks good. I can now move on to putting on my tape around the edge of my card so it will pop up my cloud die cut with enough space for that power pack. Heffy Doodle has a really awesome 3mm deep foam tape, and this is probably the best for Pear Blossom Press power packs or any of their battery packs. So I'm going to put it all around the edge of the card and anywhere behind the clouds just to make sure there's lots of support for my die cut. But before I adhere that down, I need to stamp my Press Here sentiment from my Halloween postage stamp from Whimsy. I'm getting out my VersaFine ink in Onyx Black. It's the only ink pad I trust for a nice, clean, fresh stamp only one time. And I'm figuring out where the button is behind my cloud, and I stamp the sentiment Press. And then I'm going to ink up and stamp the sentiment here. So now my card receiver knows where to press to see some interactive fun. And of course I accidentally get some black ink on my white cardstock, so I'm using my microfiber cloth just to make sure it's dry, and then using my sand eraser to get off any small spots, but that large one is going to be covered with a die cut cloud, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm going to place my die cut frame on top of my Slimline card and just make sure everything looks good. I'm pretty happy with how the layout is coming together. So now I can go ahead and pull up all of that release paper from my foam tape. I want to make sure that there is a nice adhesion of my frame to the base, so I'm going to peel off those bears on the moon. They're just being held on with some mint tape. I'm going to open up my card and make sure that the corners of this cloud Slimline die cut match the corners of my card base and gently adhere it on. And it looks good, so I can move on to gluing my bears. I already have some adhesive because of the foam tape on the upper left hand side, so I'm just going to add some wet glue to where this moon will adhere to the clouds behind it, and I will place that onto my card and press down to make sure there is a nice adhesion. And once that is done, I am going to die cut those little clouds out. These are all the small additional clouds from the Slimline cloud die. And I'm just going to play with the layout. I want to make sure anything I don't want to be seen, like the copper tape and the battery pack and that beautiful black smudge, are covered. So I'm just going around and placing clouds in various spots of how I think I'm going to adhere them down. So I'm going to get my wet glue and just start with one of my clouds here. The edges touch the white cloud die cut frame, and then there's a little spot where I'm covering up that copper tape that I'm going to use a small little square of foam tape, the same tape I used for the frame part of the die, and just place it right on. And I'm going to repeat that process for all those extra clouds and until I have a layout that I really like. I thought I was going to be done, but I wanted to add in some yellow stars just to make this more of a night sky. I have these little clay stars that I'm just using some tweezers to place in various spots on my Slimline. Then I'm using my jewel picker and wet glue to glue them down. I stamped the congratulations sentiment onto one of my quick strips, and I am just figuring out the placement. I kind of like it here under the moon, so I'm using the same Hefty Doodle foam tape and adhering that to my card base that will fit perfectly behind my quick strip. I'm pulling up that release paper. I'm going to center that sentiment to my card and then press down so it adheres nicely to my card base. And here is my final card. I absolutely love it. I'm going to dim the lights just a bit here so I can do the press here, and you can see how wonderful those lights are behind my moon and my little bear family. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you enjoyed all 4 of these easy light cards this month. I'm excited for next month. I hope you'll hit like and hit subscribe if you're new to my channel. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.